Back in 1962, the third film in the original Toho Godzilla franchise delivered on an insane idea, pitting the world's two most famous giant monsters head-to-head in King Kong versus Godzilla. A classic fun kaiju film that I go back to and have rewatched more times than I can possibly count from childhood into adulthood. But of course, the film was massively limited effects-wise for its time, and since its release, fans have always wondered if or when we would ever get a rematch between the two monsters. Because unlike many of the other Showa-era opponents that Godzilla faced, Kong was never brought back into a Godzilla film, mostly due to odd rights issues tangled up with the King Kong character, but still strange they were never able to make it work. But then finally, in 2021, nearly 50 years later, Legendary Pictures and Warner Brothers finally got iterations of the characters under one roof, and after a two-film build-up teasing that it would happen, we finally got Godzilla vs. Kong. And this movie truly goes ball to the wall with the concept, and out of all the legendary MonsterVerse films so far, it gives you the most amount of kaiju action and screen time, and advances the world building to perhaps truly ridiculous levels, but all with a sense of fun and intensity that just makes you want to tap into your inner child and just absorb all of its absurdity. The director chosen for this film was Adam Wingard, who had made a handful of really great low-budget films like The Guest or You're Next, but he did also make the live-action Death Note movie. I know. You don't need to say anything. The movie's horrible. But that aside, he did have a good track record, and I think as far as the direction of Godzilla vs. Kong, he did accomplish something pretty good here. Legendary also continued their trend of hiring people who are actually fans of the franchise, which significantly helps when it comes to these movies. Wingard even said that he went back and rewatched every single Godzilla movie before taking on this project, which I think is a good sign. He also, for better or worse, depending on what you want out of your kaiju films, really makes the monsters the stars and prime focus of this film. Kong in this movie is essentially the main character, with Godzilla kind of acting like a menacing background figure until the final act when they come together. But I think it does work because Kong has always been generally a sympathetic character, and just us as humans, we can relate a little bit more with an expressive ape creature. Meanwhile, Godzilla feels even more powerful and scary, keeping him as a bit of an antagonizing force in the background. Also, if you go back to the original Godzilla vs. King Kong, Godzilla was the villain and Kong was more sympathetic, so it's a fitting callback. Now, I do have plenty of gripes with this movie, of course, and I'll get to them later because a lot of them involve spoilers, so I'll wait towards the end of the video. But when it comes to the storyline, this movie just goes off the rails into fantasy, so if you like the more grounded approach of Godzilla 2014, this is essentially the exact opposite. So the established lore so far was that Godzilla usually shows up to take down whatever alpha monster is running amok. So the question is, why hasn't he done anything about Kong? Well, in the beginning, it shows you that since Skull Island's discovery in the 70s, as shown in Kong Skull Island the movie, Monarch has basically kept it quarantined and contained within a giant facility, basically isolating Kong there. But the movie goes even further to explain why Skull Island even exists, as sort of an extension of Hollow Earth, a dimension beneath the surface that is home to a plethora of strange creatures and giant monsters. So yeah, instead of a Monster Island like Toho had, we have Hollow Earth, which opens up the potential for the series to pretty much pull any kind of monster they want out of this dimension. And hey, as a conspiracy theorist myself, I'm all for that. Hollow Earth is probably a real thing. Monsters probably exist. There's a reason why no one can go to Antarctica. But all that aside, it's not even the wackiest parts of this movie. Meanwhile, Godzilla is destroying a bunch of facilities owned by the company called Apex for unknown reasons and causing a lot of damage in the process. As a result, the Apex founder recruits a Hollow Earth theorist named Nathan to lead an expedition to Hollow Earth in order to find a mystical power source that will enhance the progress of his company. Nathan, alongside Monarch's Eileen, decide to take Kong as their guide and find a way into Hollow Earth. The characters in this movie, I'd say, are mostly fine. To me personally, I think a bit of a step down from King of the Monsters. They're really just here to get the plot into motion, and then after that, the monsters kind of take over, which is fine, and I know a lot of people didn't like the King of the Monsters characters and cast, but I think it's a bummer losing Dr. Serizawa, and I also think one of the most annoying things for me is that they bring back Mark, played once again by Kyle Chandler, but he has maybe 3 minutes of screen time. Now, I know this movie was subject to a lot of reshoots and script changes, and I have to believe that he originally had a much bigger part that was cut out, but I wish he would have been more involved with the story. I think he was the best main character of the MonsterVerse so far, and in this movie, he just barely shows up. However, his daughter Madison, played once again by Millie Bobby Brown, has much more of the prime focus here, having a bigger, more substantial role than she had in the last movie, teaming up with her friend and a conspiracy theorist podcaster named Bernie in order to infiltrate Apex. They're basically 2 human storylines going on at the same time that merge towards the climax. You have the humans going to Hollow Earth, and you have the trio here looking into whatever Apex is doing and finding out their secrets. I like that they brought Madison back mostly to help the series feel more consistent. One thing that the original Godzilla films never did much of is bring human characters back film to film, so I like it for that reason. But in this movie specifically, Madison's storyline is pretty uninteresting and filled with that awkward kind of humor that just does not work for me. On the Kong side of the story, however, they add a little girl character named Gia, who is a deaf girl living on Skull Island, played by an actual deaf actress, that grows an attachment with Kong and can even communicate with him in sign language, which turns out to be pretty heartwarming. I like taking the idea of King Kong being attached to a human, but instead of a romantic interest like past Kong movies, it's a paternal kind of protector relationship, and you can see that he really does care for this little girl and trusts her more than he trusts any of the adults, which is pretty smart for Kong. But let's get to the real reason why we're all here. The monster fights, and damn do they deliver. The first fight happens on the ocean, putting Kong at a massive disadvantage, chained to the air carrier as Godzilla attacks them, Godzilla swimming like a shark, destroying giant ships and planes. I love how in one moment Kong just picks up a plane with a guy in it and chucks it at Godzilla. And of course, that iconic punch shown in all the trailers and promos, it's pretty fantastic. Kong jumping from carrier to carrier reminds me of that scene out of Evangelion, and this first fight in the movie is probably my favorite sequence in the entire film. When Kong dodges the atomic breath in slow motion, I mean, this is just one of those love it or hate it kind of moments, and I loved it. When Hollow Earth is eventually shown, it's pretty much like you would expect, looking like a near-endless Skull Island. There's some cool creatures here for Kong to fight, and to help even the odds against Godzilla, Kong gets a giant battle axe looking thing that looks like it's formed from a Godzilla spike and is capable of being charged up with energy and then using it as an attack. And then Godzilla literally uses his atomic breath to blast a hole into the earth, straight down into Hollow Earth after sensing Kong. So yeah, like I said, this movie is just wacky, but I think about it like this. I remember how these kind of movies made me feel when I was a kid. Watching the Showa era films, my imagination just ran wild. I loved all of its craziness, from Godzilla going into space, to the King Caesar song, to Kong having random lightning powers in the original film.
Kong has a chance. Electricity makes him stronger.
As silly as this movie is, I really do think that it stays in a spiritual cohesiveness with how wild those original Godzilla films could get, except now we have CGI and a $200 million budget. If those old films had these capabilities, I think they would have done stuff just like this. I guess what I'm saying is, if you view this movie from the lens of being a kid and having that imagination, I think it works perfectly. But if you try to analyze it critically as a piece of cinema, you'll find yourself shaking your head quite a bit. The second fight of Godzilla vs. Kong is pretty satisfying, now taking place in the city of Hong Kong. I love Kong utilizing the buildings like a jungle and swinging between them. They cause a ton of destruction. The axe is definitely used to its fullest potential a few times. We see homages to the original King Kong vs. Godzilla film. And we see Godzilla do some stuff he's never done before, like walk on all fours going full crocodile mode. And shockingly, they actually have a definitive winner of the fight instead of ending it with both characters falling into the water or keeping it ambiguous. I hate when versus films can't give us a definitive winner. Like, even though I love Freddy versus Jason, I hate the final shot. Like, just say Jason won. It's fine. We know Freddy always comes back anyway. I don't need to see him wink at the camera. But now, if you have not seen this movie, I'm going to go into pure spoiler territory. I know it's a few years old, but if I don't say spoilers, inevitably somebody in the comments will be upset, so I'm mentioning it now. So my biggest confliction with this movie is this. I truly wanted this movie to be a film that focused primarily on Godzilla versus Kong, and just those two alone. But we have another monster that joins the fray, and it's Mechagodzilla of all things. Yeah, so the reason Godzilla was attacking Apex is because he sensed their creation of Mechagodzilla. Somehow they were able to build this giant mech utilizing the Hollow Earth energy. Also, the King Ghidorah skull from the last movie, which annoyed me because there's no reason to tie in Ghidorah with Mechagodzilla. They didn't need to do that. There's an end credit scene in King of the Monsters where they have one of the Ghidorah heads still existing, and I was excited that maybe in the future Ghidorah would return or that they would do the Mecha King Ghidorah. But they blow their load entirely right here, connecting the Ghidorah consciousness with Mechagodzilla. So, wait, are you saying that Ghidorah is controlling Mechagodzilla? Or is it Ren Serizawa, who's hooked up to the skull? Oh yeah, they also create a character that is the son of the best MonsterVerse character, Dr. Serizawa, just to basically be there, to barely have him mentioned or shown, and he's just kind of there for some reason. Again, probably getting cut out in the reshoots, but it makes this Mechagodzilla situation so unnecessarily convoluted, and why is Mechagodzilla even in this movie to begin with? The reason Mechagodzilla is here is because after the Godzilla-Kong fight, then they have a reason to team up to take down a bigger, stronger opponent. And look, the fight of Godzilla and Kong versus Mechagodzilla, it's awesome, all right? It's cool, it's dope, it's fun, I like it. It does work very well for this movie. It is literally only my personal pet peeve that I wanted this movie to only focus on Godzilla and Kong. But the fight itself is glorious kaiju madness that is about as fun as you can get in a giant monster movie that I can't help but enjoy nonetheless. I also never thought I would see Kong and Mechagodzilla in the same movie, so that combination in itself is a wild treat. It might not be what I wanted, but I'm still enjoying it nonetheless. It's kind of like I wanted tacos for dinner, instead I got a cheeseburger. Well, I like tacos more, but this cheeseburger is still pretty good. Godzilla vs. Kong is something special in the sense that it gave us the long-awaited rematch of these iconic characters, and if you want a lot, and I mean a lot, of kaiju action on screen, well, this is the movie for you. The human characters are certainly weak and annoying at times, but they don't overstay their welcome. And when it's time to get serious, the movie does focus on the monsters, and hey, it doesn't cut away. But the movie is silly. By far the silliest MonsterVerse movie so far, so we'll have to see how the new Empire goes. Wingard is returning to direct that one, and it looks like basically a direct continuation of this film, also focusing on Hollow Earth, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. Comes out next week. My plan was to review each of the MonsterVerse films so far before it came out. Unfortunately, I still haven't gotten around to watching the Monarch series. I apologize about that, but at least my movie reviews are complete. Someday I will do a deeper, more fleshed out analysis on them. A Godzilla retrospective video will happen. It's just a matter of when and if my sanity can take it. But in the meantime, I thank you guys for watching these shorter reviews. Sometimes videos I want to make do not coincide with what the audience wants to see, such as the case with these video reviews, but I appreciate everybody who did watch them, and sometimes, if not most of the time, I need to make videos that are just for me. I need to make what I want to watch, and what I find interesting at the time, and what I am currently passionate about. After all, it is my YouTube channel. And right now, I'm in Godzilla mode. So that's what I'm focusing on. Anyways, guys, I appreciate you for watching this once again. Let me know what you thought of Godzilla vs. Kong. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it went too far into the silliness? Or was this what you always wanted? Just massive kaiju action on the screen nonstop? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Let me know if you're excited for the new Empire. Please like the video and comment. And if you want to support on a deeper level, I do have Patreon, channel memberships, and a merch store, and all the social media links where you can follow me in the description below. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.